Hello and welcome to a live Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri, and today is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. It's February 14th. It's a Friday, and I hope you had a good day, good morning. We certainly did, and I'm in a great mood because not only because it's shaping up to be a beautiful day in Texas. It was cold for a few days. It looks like it's going to be warm again, but also I finally did something I promised I was going to do. I have to thank G-Man. This is all G-Man's fault. G-Man sent me this ridiculous Maga visor, and I know, G-Man, you probably thought she's never going to wear it. Why did I send it? Because I don't look. It's terrible. It makes my hair bunch up on top. But it's so ridiculous. And it made me think of the McDonald's menu song. Do you guys remember this? If you're a young person and you didn't grow up in the 80s, you missed out on the McDonald's menu song. It was in a lot of the commercials. It was basically a rap. It was an early rap. And they had a contest where they sent out like these flimsy records, because I had one of the records. They had these records, and you were supposed to learn. It had all the lyrics of the song, and it was helping you. It broke the song down, and it had a chorus on there, and it was to teach you how to sing the menu song for kids. And they were going to have a contest, and you could win like $1 million if your class sang it best or something. And I don't remember ever submitting to the contest, but my brother and sister and I memorized the whole song. We played that record, and we wore that record out, and we made our parents sit and watch us perform the McDonald's menu song. And also we made them watch us perform it with puppets. Like, we love that song. And I knew the whole thing, and it's super fast. It's a very fast rap. And so I thought it would be so funny if Bros and Bo says, I vaguely remember this. Okay. I went and got the music for the McDonald's menu song from like 1988 or 89. And I thought it would be funny to do a video of all of Trump's accomplishments, or a lot of them, since he's taken office, because he's done so many. As you guys know, we've covered on this channel. It's a crazy list of stuff he's done, and try and put it all in a very fast rap. And so this is my attempt. Now, I tried it here. I just uploaded it. This is I'm kind of just in a giggly mood because this makes me laugh. My husband has had to endure me learning this song, and here we go. Here we go. Okay. Now this is a list of it's the McMaga song. This is a list of Trump's accomplishments since he's been in office, and set to the tune of the McDonald's menu song. Here we go. Here it goes. First, speak from DJ to the government, new hiring freeze, put the EI, restore free speech, enforce the law, let's fill the law, Tom home and deeper spelling guys and Dr. Phil and beds with eyes and sexist male or female, there's to make your own news eaters. Jason Parks, Hyde Amendment, haha takes and crying, maybe Tulsi has a RFK, somebody let that cash metallic, 4-week tuna, transit kids, and onesie steak, Bernie, romantic funding where the sanctuaries did for who in Paris do, and the USAID, they robbed us over 40B with Doge and Elon, JD, Juliet, strain the swap, take girls for soup. I love the Donald say a prayer, Margaret, I don't really care. Sorry. It's like Inception. I'm wearing the same outfit because I just recorded it. It's watching it. Anyway, it just makes me laugh. You try to sing this song without laughing. There's like 100 takes that I messed up, and they're all ridiculous because it's a tongue twister. It's so stupid. Yes, of course it's corny, ADL. It's corny. It's so stupid. And Margaret, I don't really care. That's the ending. That's the best. That's the greatest ending. Okay. Anyway, I had fun. I'm in a giggly mood. Okay, I'm going to get out of this giggly mood. I also watched J.D. Vance's speech this morning. He gave a fire speech in Munich, Germany, about security. It was at the security conference. And he gave it on the heels of a terrorist attack yesterday in Munich, Germany. My husband was telling me about it. We have friends in Munich. We go to Germany. We try to go once a year. He goes, or at least he does, goes with his band. He's been going to Germany for years. He used to live there. And so that was on his radar last night. He was telling me about this awful terrorist attack, this Afghan national who's there, and a quote unquote asylum seeker, right? It's always these young military age men who are coming in. seeking asylum. Anyway, this guy like ran over a bunch of people on purpose. At least 36 injured was the last number I heard. Happened yesterday. And so JD Vance was scheduled to speak today at this conference. And so he talked about security. It's a conference about security. So he talked about immigration. He talked about security, and he talked about the threats, not just from without, but the threats from within. And he also talked about censorship. I got to see it. It's not a long speech. So I think that we are going to I think that we're going to watch it together. We might pause it and have some things to say about it, but it's based. It is a fiery speech. It's a great speech. And I would be shocked if the government, if the government in the elections, I would say like in Germany, don't end up going the way that they have here eventually, where people are sick of it and they want something different, and they want somebody who wants to put Germany first and to protect German citizens and to do some more, common sense, traditional kind of policies that actually, that are about caring for people and protecting people and providing for the best, the most amount of good. So we're going to watch this together. Here, let me get this pulled up. I was just looking at this. Who is this? Oh, there's a troll in the chat. No, I wouldn't say troll because this person's not funny. Trolls are usually funny. I think trolls are funny. But there's someone in the chat who's a hater. There's a hater. That's okay. You can watch this video with us. I hope you will. Tiger, my dog is having a field day over there. Okay. This isn't long. This is like 20 minutes. And it's such an excellent speech. There we go. And I just want to thank a couple people before we start. Pirate Tomsky messaged me today before I started. He said, "Hey, have you seen this speech? It's great." And then he was like, "Oh, wait, I saw that's what you're doing the video about." I'm like, "Yeah, I just watched it. It's amazing." Pirate Tomsky for £5. Thank you, Pirate. Says the only thing Vance didn't do is say at the end, "And if you don't get your effing act together, we're pulling all NATO funding." Mic drop, exit stage. Margaret, I don't really care. Exit stage. You're right. Thank you for the super chat, Pirate Tomsky, and thanks for holding it down as one of our splendid mods. Pirate also gifted 5 Deprogrammed memberships. So if you got one of those, thank Pirate. He's the membership fairy today. Thank you, sir. And then Randy Wallen for $5. Thank you, Randy. Says, "Go Keri, our happy warrior. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Help spread the word." Thank you, Randy, Hype Man Randy, for reminding me to say that. If you like the video, hit like and subscribe and all those things. Okay, here we go. We're gonna watch this video together, and we might pause it and talk a little bit about it. But if you haven't seen it yet, you're gonna get to watch it with us.
Mr. JD Vance, who was here last year as senator, and we are very happy that he has come back to Munich. And we are very much looking forward to his speech. Please welcome Vice President JD Vance.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all the gathered delegates and luminaries and media professionals, and thanks especially to the host of the Munich Security Conference for being able to put on such an incredible event. We're, of course, thrilled to be here. We're happy to be here. And, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples, to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours. And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even as, of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with my wife, actually, who's here with me today, on a personal trip. And I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now, I hope that's not the last bit of applause that
Let's just pause it for a second. I want to pull this up. This is the latest news. I mean, this was updated a couple hours ago, but you know, it's just so frustrating. There we go. German car attack. This is from Reuters. May have been religiously motivated, prosecutors say. I mean, regardless of whether it's religious or not, I mean, it's certainly ideologically motivated and resentment motivated and evil motivated. All of these things. So it's at least 36 people, including a child. An Afghan national with a perceived Islamist motive has admitted to purposely driving into a crowd in Munich, injuring, at least 39. And, plowed into demonstrators gathered in the city center. Quote, there is a suspicion that the act was religiously motivated and is understood as an attack on the free democratic basic order. If you scroll down, it says, I'm very cautious about making hasty judgments, but based on everything we know at the moment, I would venture to speak of an Islamist motivation for the crime. Officers fired on the car after the attack, but the suspect was not hit. Tillman said the driver subsequently said the words Allah Akbar and prayed in the presence of police. Yeah, it certainly sounds like Islamic terrorism. And you know what's crazy? I had there are some people in Munich who I believe are just, they're like some of the leftists here, or people who believe the cult narrative, that believe the corporate media, and they believe all of this crap, this Marxist crap. And there are some people in Munich who are saying, we think this could have been arranged by the Russian government. Like, we think this could be a psyop, and we think this could have been planned by the Russians. And I haven't delved much more deeply into this conspiracy theory, but it is kind of funny that the people who would say such a thing are the very ones who accuse reality-based people of being conspiracy theorists. Remember, they called us that when we were like, hey, I think that probably this new COVID virus might have come from the lab in Wuhan, where it originated, that actually does gain-of-function research on coronaviruses. Like, maybe that's where it came from. Maybe it leaked from that lab, and they were like, no, you're a conspiracy theorist. It jumped several species in a wet market nearby that just so happened to be next door to this lab that genetically engineers coronaviruses. They call us conspiracy theorists for saying the most obvious things, but then they will jump through these crazy hoops to be like, yeah, COVID came from a wet market and jumped several species, and or what is obviously an Islamic terrorist attack committed by one of the many unvetted quote unquote asylum seekers that you've let into your country because you don't have an immigration policy, because you basically have open borders and you let everybody in. And it's like leaving your front door and everybody come on into my house. Everyone. It's mostly military age young men coming in, like this guy, 24. It's, for some reason, it's more comforting because they're in this other world, this other reality. It's more comforting to tell themselves this was probably some kind of crazy psyop planned by the Russians. So if you go down that path, I was like, first of all, why would the Russians plan something like this? This is a weird thing. And I was told, well, because they say it's probably going to have an impact on the upcoming elections, and that it might help the populist party, the AfD party, which is a more based party, that it might help this party to win. And I was like, yes, but okay, maybe it will. But what does that have to do with Russia? Why would Russia want a stronger Germany? Like, why would Russia want the people to elect a Germany first administration? Like, why would Russia want Germany to be like taking care of German citizens and putting German interests first? Like, I just, even the hoops that you have to jump through to get there is ridiculous to me. Yes, Rosa, that's where we are. You nailed it. Blame everything on Russia. Just blame everything. That's the place they're in right now. It doesn't have to make sense. They do the same thing with Trump. Just blame everything on Trump. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. Just blame everything on Trump, or blame everything on Russia. Oh, it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. Not that Putin is great either. Of course. Yeah, he's not at all. But it's just so, it's like, it's such a ridiculous thing to twist yourself into knots, to deny reality. To deny reality, the reality is your lousy immigration policies and problems are leading to your people not being safe. Your people coming last. German citizens coming last. The safety of your women and children coming last. Like, it doesn't make, and that's a hard thing to admit, I think. Anyway, Bumbledore, did you miss the song at the beginning? I did a whole song for you. Bumbledore, aka G-Man, for $5. Thank you, sir. Says, looking spiffy in your visor. Whoever gave it to you must be a really cool dude. I listened to your McMaga song on 2 times speed and it exploded my head. So you did hear it. Good. There you go. It's your fault. You gave me this visor. It's a ridiculous visor. Pirate Tomsky for £5. Thank you, Pirate. Says, Sargon released a video called Freedom from You, which breaks down why the progressives love immigrants but hate their own people. Great analysis. Oh, thank you for that. I will go and check it out. Remind me, Pirate, in DM also to check that out, because I might forget. Okay, if you think of it. Okay, here we go. Let's continue. Let's continue with the speech. I just, that just happened yesterday in Munich, this terrorist attack, and already people want to be in denial about it happening, about why it happened, I would say, rather.
I get, but we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, The Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action.
That is not the government's job. It is not the government's job to censor people. It is not within their rights. You have God-given rights to speak your mind. And for the government, this is what oppression is. They want to use that word all the time, the woke. This is what tyranny is, oppression, authoritarianism, is a government saying we're going to censor speech we don't like. You have to allow, if you believe in the importance of free speech and you understand why it's important, then you will defend even speech that you find abhorrent. You will defend people's right to say it without the government shutting them down. Without men with guns shutting them down. That's what the government is. Men with guns. The gun in the room.
I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before.
If you haven't seen this video, you should watch it. There's video of it, because as the police approached him, he started filming, and he's standing, he's not saying anything. He's not shouting anything. He's standing way across the street. He's just a man standing on a public street corner in silence with no signs, not saying or shouting or doing anything. And the police come up to him and ask him what he's doing. And he says, I'm silent. He says, I'm silently praying to myself. What about? He says, about my son. They arrested him. Okay? Do you understand what world we're in now? They arrested him and convicted him in the UK for silently praying. What kind of world, what kind of culture are we creating when we say, hey, in our culture, in our society, We want to be able to put people in prison with threat of force from the government if they silently pray in public. Like, what kind of world are we creating? What is the UK doing? What are they doing?
Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility.
Silent prayer is banned within 200 meters of an abortion facility. Do you understand that? You can't pray silently. And you might be like, well, Keri, this sounds like a thought crime. This sounds like Orwellian, like something Orwell would write about. Yes, it does, because it's insane. Because it's insane. This is, first of all, hate speech laws are ridiculous. They're against your God-given rights to speech. They're tyrannical. They're authoritarian. This goes a step beyond hate speech laws. This is thought crime laws, thought crime and prayer crime, silent prayers. And why are they banned? Because they might influence somebody's decision. Oh no, prayer might work. Like, even the idea that that the government's job is to use force, is to use the gun in the room to make sure that nobody influences anybody about abortion. Are you kidding me? Why? Why are you protecting abortion like it's some sacred thing? I've been in that position. I pray like that people, that women who are in the position I was in, that somebody stops them by saying the right thing or praying for them or with the right influence, right? I wish that somebody had influenced me to make a different decision. This whole idea that like, oh, you shouldn't influence people. Like you shouldn't influence people's decision on abortion. Why? Why is that some sacred thing? Actually, probably it's a life-ending thing. That's what it is. You are ending a human life. Maybe we should err on the side of as much information as possible, as much input as possible. And the idea that a person silently praying 200 yards across the street on a public intersection is that's just too much. That might influence you, that they're quietly praying. That might influence you not to get the abortion. So we can't allow it. That's just evil. It's just evil.
He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law.
Did you hear this? Did you hear this? This is not a joke. It sounds like it's out of a movie. If you're joining us from the left, I know there was a hater here earlier. I hope you're still here. Do you hear this? It doesn't matter if it's right or left or anything. Take all of your stupid categories and ideas out of your head. Just think about this. The government telling you, sending letters to your home saying, hey, you live within a certain distance of an abortion clinic. Therefore, we're just writing to let you know that you may not pray in your home because it's probably a violation of our new law that protects abortion clinics from any silent prayer happening around it. We just want to let you know, can't pray in your home. We've written it down in the law now. What kind of government is that? Are you crazy? It's fascist. It's communist. It's all the things that, throughout history that were like, hey, let's never do this again. Yes, it's wild. It sounds like it's out of a movie, and it's real. This is where the UK's at. This is what the UK thinks is important.
Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation.
Yes.
Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been waiting for somebody with JD Vance's degree of prominence and platform to yell this with as much full-throated passion as podcasters and people do, as your friends do. Like, thank you. Our vice president is saying this. Thank you, God. We have a vice president who's saying this. What they did was so wrong. And they tried to get around the First Amendment. The Biden administration, the federal government tried to get around the First Amendment by going to the social media companies like Twitter and like Facebook and Instagram and meeting with them over and over again. They sent the 3-letter agencies who are supposed to work for us, who are paid by us. They sent them to meet with these big social corporations and tell them what to censor, who to censor, to do it on their behalf. To do it on the government's behalf, at the government's behest. It is so wrong. It is un-American. It's not democratic. It's all the things the leftists like to claim they care about. Bullshit. Because none of you, I don't hear any of you speaking up about this. And our vice president is finally saying that was wrong. And it was wrong that our government did that, not just to our citizens, but tried to enforce it in other countries too. What information other countries, we were a part of that evil in other countries, censoring people who were trying to get out information, censoring scientists and doctors. Thank you. Thank you, God, for JD Vance.
So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
There's like one clap. Look at the deafening silence of a room full of leftists who don't like what they're hearing. They're like, but we like censorship. What are you doing? These leftist extremists. Did you hear I said about with Trump, there's a new sheriff in town? I wanted to show you. I happen to be wearing my Trump sheriff shirt. Look at this. Look at this. The return. There's a new sheriff in town. I love it. Oh my goodness. This crowd is seething and coping, says Pepina. Yes. Vance doesn't care for claps. No, he doesn't, pathetic hermetic. Who cares? Who cares what they say? He's not like Jeb Bush, is he? Was it Jeb Bush that said, please clap, please? Please clap. Oh, that's a few.
Now we're at the point.
That's actually more claps than I expected. Those are some people committing some thought crime in that room. There's a few of them.
Point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
This is the stuff we talked about in a previous video that's happening in Romania, and how they just threw out the results of the election because they don't like the results. I remember we said they're going to do this, and they're going to try to do this in other countries. You can bet your bottom dollar if the AfD wins in Germany, like, they are going to try and annul it. They will say, we're throwing it out because why? They'll probably say this retarded stuff about Russia. They'll probably say something stupid like that. Oh, we don't care what the citizens voted for. We're annulling it. We're just getting rid of elections. These people who claim to care about democracy in the electoral process. Screw these people, these liars.
Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding.
Let me pause it again. Look at this. What's he talking about, you might be asking? What do you mean that this very conference he's speaking at banned political parties from participating? Oh, is it true? It is true. Look at this from Politico. World's top defense conference bans Germany's populist left and right parties. The Munich Security Conference gets tough on anti-establishment parties ahead of the German election. Anti-establishment is right, isn't it? That's right. Let's see what else they have to say. The far right alternative for Germany, the AfD. Far right? That's crap. You guys call everything far right. You call me far right. You call Trump far right. You call Trump's a liberal, okay? You call anything far. You call farmers in Amsterdam far right. So I don't trust that anymore. It's hard to know when that's real and when it's not. And you know the danger of this? We're starting to see in the States, some actual ridiculous far right, neo-Nazi, woke right, some people are calling them, racists, who are starting to gain a little bit of traction in the States, and they're trying to claim ownership over Trump. They're trying to claim ownership over Trump, who they didn't even vote for. Nick Fuentes and his alt-right douchebag followers, he told them not to vote for Trump. He wasn't voting for Trump. They all wrote in stuff like Hitler and Fuentes for president. They didn't even vote for Trump, but they try to claim Trump now. And there's a bunch of these guys who pretend to be Christians. There's a bunch of them who are pastors, who are false shepherds. There's one in Georgetown. Like, I've just become aware of some of the crazy stuff this devil is saying. But so there's this movement of actual quote unquote far right, although I would argue they have a lot of leftist views. They have a lot of woke views. So, it's a semantics thing. Are they really on the right or not? I don't know. Anyway, the point being, if you call everyone far right, if you call everyone extremist, if you call everyone Nazi or neo-Nazi, then when these bad things, when the wolf actually does arrive and does show up, nobody's going to believe you. Everybody's going to be like, those words don't mean anything anymore because you misuse them all the time. And we're starting to see that happening now, where I have people every day in my comments now telling me like, oh, Keri, this is nothing. It's overblown. These people you're calling out, as the so-called woke right, and it's overblown. It doesn't really exist. Those were racism. One of these guys said racism doesn't exist. Like, they say stuff like this because those words have been misused. So this is the danger in Germany too. If you call everybody that, then when it actually arrives, nobody will believe you. And if there are, and I believe there probably are, some nasty racist people in that party or who support the AfD, then get them out. Do the same thing we're trying to do here, which is to disassociate them, to push them to the margins, to marginalize them. Do that. Do that. Okay, so it says the far-right alternative for Germany, AfD, and the newly formed left populist party, BSW, were both barred from the Munich Security Conference. They were both barred from this very place that JD Vance spoke at today. How? Like, how do you defend that? How do you defend banning them? Because they're popular? How do you get to decide? Like, oh, they shouldn't be allowed to speak. You know what? It's going to backfire on you anyway. Because when you do that, when you don't allow people, you don't give people the choice. Like, you could have them there and criticize them. Look, I criticize the woke right freaks all the time. I criticize the Democrats and the woke all the time. But the minute you start trying to ban and say they can't participate, they're not allowed, like that's when people are going to be like gravitating towards them. It's going to backfire anyway. Here, I'm putting this back on the screen.
Behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion, or, God forbid, vote a different way, or, even worse, win an election. Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger. But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we are defending in the first place? I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern. because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail, whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news. Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know the situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children. And they're smart. I think this is one of the most important things I've learned in my brief time in politics. Contrary to what you might hear a couple mountains over in Davos, the citizens of all of our nations don't generally think of themselves as educated animals or as interchangeable cogs of a global economy. And it's hardly surprising that they don't want to be shuffled about or relentlessly ignored by their leaders. And it is the business of democracy to adjudicate these big questions at the ballot box. I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections, or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy.
Yes.
And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
That's the best. That's the best. Listen, we had to listen to that sanctimonious little climate scold for that child for how long? You gave us that, Europe. I think you can survive a few months of Elon Musk. Frankly, Margaret, I don't really care.
But what German democracy, what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans The people have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
Thank you, Munich, and good night. Thank you, Munich, and good night. What a great speech. It just feels so good to have a leader like this who speaks this way. I saw one of the articles, of course, the corporate media hates this. The leftist corporate media hates it. But I did see one of the headlines said he was philosophical, or no, it was another leader. I think it was a UN leader who said that the speech was philosophical, and it was. And it's great to have that kind of an intellectual in a leadership role, and someone who's actually talking about things that mean things. We are all so sick of the woke crap of the speeches about nothing, where they just talk about ideology and like honoring the gender spectrum and all this nonsense. And this guy's like, let's talk about what's important. Let's talk about democracy and freedom of speech and censorship and authoritarianism and tyranny. Let's talk about security and immigration and civilizational values, shared values. This is a speech about things that matter. And it's so nice to have a leader saying these things. It's true, AH, the speech is hot air until wrongdoers are arrested or suffer some consequences. True, but this is where it starts. This is where things like that start, with someone expressing support for these ideas. Is it better to have someone saying this or not? Come on, AH. Don't be such a Grinch. Don't be such a Grinch with some applause for somebody saying something like this. Would you rather have a Kamala Harris in the VP role talking about race and sexuality and gender and all the crap that doesn't matter? No. Thank God we have someone speaking of things that matter. And yes, we want to see it put into actions. Of course. And I would hope that Europe, the leaders who are sitting there listening to him, would really think about what he's talking about. Would really think about it. And I think the voters there will. Let's see what happens in Germany. I want to show you what the mainstream news with the corporate news is saying about this. John says, OMG, Keri is giving me flashbacks to Kamala. No, yeah, I know. Thank God we are not listening to that right now. AH, at the very least, AH. Don't you agree? Thank God we're not listening to that crap right now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Gratitude. So, okay, let's not an ad. I thought I keep getting rid of those and they keep coming back. What's happening? Okay. Here we go. This is how CNN is reporting on the speech. They've got a few different articles about it already. They're very alarmed. Headline. This is CNN World. Headline: Vance turns on European allies. What? He turns on them? I think he keeps saying we and our values and shared values and we and he's talking about what we have in common, and he's giving some very stern advice, loving advice and guidance, which is not always ass kissing. sometimes the most loving critique you can give is a harsh one based in truth. That's what he's doing in the interest of our shared values and principles with Europe. So he's not turning on them. He's trying to offer them some perspective, a different perspective. But CNN says Vance turns on European allies in blistering speech. It was blistering. It was great. It was fiery. A blistering speech that downplayed threats from Russia and China. What are you talking about? That made it into the headline? He didn't even talk about, oh, is that what you mean? Because he didn't spend the whole speech talking about Russia and China. Look, we know Russia and China are threats. Of course they are. He's talking about a primary threat, which comes from within. How are we supposed to stand up against external threats if we are destroying ourselves from within? You know, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, because JD Vance was talking about the Ordo Amoris, the order of loves, of natural loves. We got a chance, the whole nation got a chance to hear about that, which was amazing. So we talked about how it's natural for humans. We order our loves, our responsibilities, our duties. Of course we do. Also, we should naturally, we should prioritize and order our threats. And if you're not putting your mask on first, you're not going to be able to help others. Like if you think about a flight going down and they're like, put your mask on before you help anyone next to you. If you're on a plane and something bad happens, make sure you get your mask on first before you help someone else. If you are not taking care of yourself and protecting your country from internal threats, how are you going to deal with the external ones? It's a priority of threats, CNN. He's talking about this dire threat. The threat from within that Europe wants to ignore, that our previous administration wanted to ignore. So it continues. CNN says, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance vented at European leaders Friday, telling them that the biggest threat to their security was, quote, from within, rather than China and Russia. I like the way they that part's not in quotes there because he didn't say it like that, but they paraphrase it that way. Anyway, Vance used his first major speech as vice president to lambast European politicians, claiming they are suppressing free speech, losing control of immigration, and refusing to work with hard right parties in government. The audience at the Munich Security Conference was expecting to hear about the Trump administration's plans to end the war in Ukraine, but instead were treated to a bombastic rejection of liberal orthodoxies that had prevailed in Western Europe since the Second World War, in a speech that downplayed the threats to the continent posed by Russia and China. This is bullshit. This part right here is bullshit. And you know who agrees with this? The woke and the woke right, the so-called woke right. They both try and pretend that that there's some sort of the woke right folks. I'm about to write a piece. I'm working on a piece about this, trying to explain what these morons are all about. But one of the phrases they all love to repeat is the liberal post-war consensus. Liberal post-war consensus. They run around saying this all the time. And they're trying to say that if you say, hey, we should protect our borders and we should protect our citizens, obviously, and we should prioritize our responsibilities and duties, obviously, that somehow you are rejecting this so-called liberal post-war consensus. And the woke here are calling it liberal orthodoxies that have prevailed in Western Europe since the Second World War. See, they've got the post-war thing in there. It's not a rejection. It's not. The orthodoxies that he's speaking against are woke orthodoxies. Woke is not liberal. He's speaking against, like in Germany, completely open borders, unchecked immigration, completely unvetted, destroying your country from within. This is a woke ideology that supports this. It also, this part here, in a speech that downplayed the threats to the continent posed by Russia and China. Did it downplay them? I don't think it downplayed them. He just said, I'm going to talk about the primary threat, which is a threat from within. He didn't then go and say, oh, poo-poo, I'm going to poo-poo the threats from Russia and China. He didn't do that. He didn't downplay it. Lies. Lies. Quote, the threat that I worry most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, not China. It's not any other external actor. What I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values. That's a quote. And it says Vance told this to the stone-faced audience. Yeah, and he's right. The vice president who met with Ukraine's president Zelensky at the conference said that, quote, shutting down, end quote, unorthodox viewpoints is the, quote, most surefire way to destroy democracy, end quote. It is. Shutting down free speech is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. It is. And he called on European leaders who have been elected by their respective peoples to, quote, embrace what your people tell you. This is a speech that he was all about the importance of free speech. He's all about opposing censorship. So no, it's not a speech that's somehow against liberal beliefs. It is a speech upholding liberal values, including the freedom of speech, like what the word liberal actually means. Classical liberal beliefs. Travel Lori. Oh, this is great to hear from someone who has family in Germany. Travel Lori says, we have family in Germany, and even they are concerned about their open borders. Everyone is now. If they're not completely brainwashed, they're worried. I just want to thank a couple people. DeBeast808 for $5. Thank you for the super chat. DeBeast, well, first of all, DeBeast became a member of the channel, which helps us grow. I appreciate it so much. You can become a member for, I think it's as little as $1 a month. I appreciate it. And he also gifted 5 memberships to other people. Thank you, DeBeast. And gave a $5 super chat. And he says, listen, they fear prayer because it works. Even the mention of Jesus Christ in their presence will cause demons and evil to writhe and seethe. Prayers up to beast. And you're right. I've seen this happen. I didn't used to, this used to be one of those things where I was like, this is one of those things that the longer I've been a Christian where you start to learn things through experience. Like when I spoke at this Austin City Council last year against surgeries and hormone treatment for children, these mutilating and sterilizing treatments. And there was a woman who got up and was reading scripture during her allotted, I think you had 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And all the woke disciples who were there to speak, all the cult members were just hissing, literally hissing. I talked about it at the time because it was so crazy. Hissing and seething. They could not help themselves to hearing the word of God. That's how they reacted. And I've seen it in other cases too. They can't help themselves. It's crazy. You're so right though. Like, why would they go so far in the UK to be like, look, you can't even quietly, privately pray in your house if you're near an abortion clinic? They believe, demons believe in God. They do. Randy Wallen for $10. Thank you for the super chat, Randy. Randy says, the left used USAID, etc., to propagandize hatred of the West and to destabilize the world for decades. Yes, they did. It wants us at each other's throats while they rob us, poison us, jail us for prayer and dissent. Yes, that's the world we're in now. And if you start to understand that's the reality we're in, like, it doesn't mean that you have to become black-pilled. It doesn't mean that you have to become a nihilist and like everything's doomed. No. I did this funny, like, I was trying to be funny, explaining what the different pills are, like the white pill, the black pill, all that stuff, for red pill for normies, because actually some people I know in real life who are like, I don't know what white pill means, or I don't know what black pill means. So I was like, here's what they mean. I was trying to be humorous, but also explain it. And, white pill is basically, there is hope. White pill is like, I see everything clearly. It's like the Wendell Berry poem, have joy, about having joy, even though I've considered all the facts. It's like, I see all the threats. I see all the darkness. And yet I know there's light. A lot of times the white pill is also called the God pill, because it's sort of, I know who holds the world in his hands. I know the Alpha and the Omega. So even though all of this is true, everything Randy says is true, you have peace within the storm. You know who is the creator. Thank you for that. Randy for $5. Thank you. Again, Randy says the left uses blistering, fiery, vented, pounce, etc. as pejoratives. Yeah, they do. He says Vance was calm, accessible, and moral. He drew a line in the sand effectively. Yes, they do. And if you're on the left and you're watching, and I know some of you do, because, well, there was one of you in the chat earlier, but also some of you, if you keep watching long enough, I have a pretty good track record of helping you leave the woke left. So I'm just warning you. I have some of you in the chat used to be in the woke like I was. You know it. You know it's true. Testify. I'm just saying, you might be here to hate on me, but then you keep coming back. Why are you coming back? You might start to be like, oh, maybe they're right about XYZ. So if you are here from the left, I'll say this. If you start to notice how the corporate media tells you to think about things, the kind of stuff Randy's talking about in the super chat, they tell you, they use negative phrasing, they use negative words when they want you to hate or dislike someone. They use positive, flattering words when they want you to like that. They're always telling you what to think. They're always giving you opinions. They are giving you the opinions they want you to have. Look how many times they won't include quotes or links so you can go and watch a speech yourself or read it yourself. They won't include that. They'll tell you their opinion of what the speech was like or what it was about, and you'll have to search high and low to find an actual transcript so you can read the quote yourself or listen to it yourself. Do that with Trump speeches. That was one of the first things I started doing when I left the woke cult, was going back and looking at some of the things, because I thought I knew a lot about what Trump had talked about, but I didn't know anything. I knew what the media told me to think, but I had never really even watched one of his speeches. So I went back and started watching them. And that's when I realized a bunch of the lies they had told me, like the lie that the president, Biden, and the former president and vice president, Kamala Harris, and Obama kept repeating, and Hillary Clinton kept repeating the very fine people lie over and over. And they know it's a lie. They know it's a lie. They are dishonest snakes. And the media, dishonest snakes, because you can go back and you can read that speech. You can watch that speech yourself and you can go, oh my God, the bold-faced lying. And it makes you pretty angry when you realize they pulled the wool over your eyes, told you what to think, told you absolute lies. Legalize adulthood. Thank you for the very generous super chat. Thank you for supporting Deprogrammed. That's awesome. For $50. Legalize Adulthood says, I watched JD's speech this morning and it was glorious. He mentioned the scuttled Romanian election twice. Yes. I'm so glad someone is talking about that. I have Tara to thank, for bringing it to my attention. And I can't believe, if I have time, we'll do a whole episode on the Romanian thing, because it's crazy. And you know that we had a hand in that. Of course we did. Now that we know all the stuff about USAID and our money and where it goes, and OCCRP, like that documentary we watched, and how they basically brag. They brag that they are part of regime changes in other countries under the guise of USAID. Like, of course. I'm very happy. So he says he mentioned the scuttled Romanian election twice. That means he knows how scurrilous an action that was indeed. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Legalize Adulthood. And again, thank you for the very generous support. I just liked this comment from John who said, "Tuck up, you pansies," during JD's speech. Tuck up, you pansies. He also says, "Justice for Romania." Okay, so let me see which. We're just looking at the mainstream media and what they had to say about this awesome speech. Of course, it's just, you know what it is. It's more of the same. It's just like scare tactics, scare tactics, scare tactics. The speech is awful, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, JD Vance is awful and Trump is awful and Musk is, it's the same old nonsense. I want to show you this one, though. This is kind of interesting. This is the guy who called it philosophical. This is also from CNN. Okay, do you see that one? This one's called NATO Chief Calls Vance's Speech Philosophical. It was. And says that Europe must grow up. Yes. And increase defense spending. Oh, okay. And then and then also give us more money to spend defense spending. NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte called U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's controversial speech. See, why is it controversial? He's saying like, duh, let's like protect our citizens and allow free speech and, you know, like what? Let's have rules for immigration and let's vet people who are coming in and let's make sure that we do it in an orderly fashion and we have laws around it. Like, okay, that's controversial. Okay, so this guy said that J.D. Vance's controversial speech today was philosophical, adding that Vance, quote, stressed the unity of the U.S. and Europe and alluded to our common values of free speech and democracy. Yes, he did. That was my point earlier. They're trying to say it was divisive or he unloaded on or he attacked Europe. No, he kept appealing to our common shared values. Vance accused European leaders of suppressing free speech and refusing to work with hard right parties and government in the speech. And of course, Vance didn't call them hard right. That's what you guys, CNN, are calling them. See, leftists, how this works? See how they tell you what to think? They tell you these are hard right groups. Refusing to work with hard right parties and government in the speech, which Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius called, quote, unacceptable. Frankly, Boris, I don't really care. Frankly, Boris, Margaret, we don't really care. Speaking to CNN's Christine Amanpour in Munich, Germany, Rutte said, quote, the vice president giving a more philosophical speech here, but he very much stressed the unity of the U.S. and Europe, that we are really one family, and indeed here, where he alluded to our common values of free speech, of democracy, etc., and these are values which bind us. Yeah. So that's the NATO guy saying that. As to NATO spending, Rutte told CNN he understands the United States' irritation over its higher spending on defense than other NATO members, saying that Europe has to, quote, grow up and take care of its own responsibility. That's great. That's a great thing to say. This comes after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth this week cemented the Trump administration's demand for NATO members to spend 5% of their GDP on defense. Rutte went on to say that senior American officials have expressed to him the need to end the war in Ukraine as soon as possible. A final deal in Ukraine has to be a strong deal. A weak deal on Ukraine will not only have consequences here in Europe and for the collective NATO security, but also for China, which will then feel emboldened to move with whatever they want to do, he said. So I thought those were good comments from the NATO chief. I want to see, though, the full comments of this guy, Boris, in Germany, because he sounds like he's a little butthurt. Here we go. He derides Vance's remarks. Oh, look, he looks like what you would expect. Here we go. Germany's Pistorius derides Vance's remarks. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius I know it's Pistorius, but it's funnier if you if you say it like it rhymes. It's just a funny name. It's like a cartoon name. Okay. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius criticized U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference. Vance claimed freedom of speech is in retreat in Europe. It is. It is in retreat in Europe. And it's been in retreat in the U.S. for a while, too. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has rejected U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's comments regarding the lack of democracy and free speech within Europe. Quote, I expressly reject what U.S. Vice President Vance said at the Munich Security Conference, end quote. That's what Scholz posted on X. He said, quote, from the experience of National Socialism, the democratic parties in Germany have a common consensus. This is the firewall against extreme right-wing parties, end quote. Okay, well, here's the thing you're not getting, Olaf, is that you didn't firewall against anything, against any extremes, because you guys are freaking extreme. You guys are the Nazis. Do you know what I mean? Like, you guys are the fascists. You guys are the people who are okay with the government and corporations colluding to censor the citizens, to censor the population. You're okay with it. Do you see what I'm saying? You're okay with importing all of these unvetted immigrants into your country, threatening the security of your people with no regulation on how many or where or when. And in Germany, they're not even allowed to work, right? These quote unquote asylum seekers. So they're there all day hating and seething and plotting on the dime of your citizens who are paying for them to be there. And then they plot terrorist attacks like this, like what happened yesterday. You guys are the extremists. So you didn't create a firewall against anything. You are the baddies. You're the baddies. I thought they were going to talk a little more about Boris Pistorius. I wanted to see what Boris Pistorius said. Do I have to keep going down to see more? I don't know. Let me just back out of this. Show us what Boris said. What Olaf said was also... Here we go. Let's see. Oh, that one's a video. German leaders reject J.D. Vance. Okay. He also met with Alice Weidel, the co-leader and candidate for the AfD. And you know what the AP calls it? They call it the far right and anti-immigrant AfD. Let's see. Again, it's hard to find actual like full-length quotes. What did Boris Pistorius say today? What did he say today? Where's the actual full quote? Okay, here we go. Here's one. I'm putting it up on the screen. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, speaking a couple of hours later, said he couldn't let the speech go without comment. Quote, if I understood him correctly, he is comparing conditions in parts of Europe with those in authoritarian regimes. Yes, he is. And in parts of the US. Yes, you guys have been supporting authoritarianism. Ding, 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 ding. You get a prize, Boris Pistorius. Welcome to reality. It's true. Any government that would governments that he's criticizing, like in European governments, like in the UK and Germany, and he's talking about what happened in Romania. You guys are suspending elections. You're throwing out election results. You're participating, us too, in regime change operations against the will of the people. You're censoring different political parties. You wouldn't even let two political parties be at this event today. You wouldn't even let them be there. Yes, you're authoritarian. We've got countries in Europe that are jailing and convicting people for praying quietly and privately to themselves, not out loud. we just lived through several years of the US, our government, colluding with big corporations to censor Americans and censor doctors and censor scientists, to censor news stories that might affect election results. We do the very things that we complain that Russia does. We do them too. Our government killed the Hunter Biden laptop story. That is fact. That is a matter of record. Go read the Twitter files. Go read the Facebook files. Look at Mark Zuckerberg's testimony to Congress. The Biden administration, the Obama and Biden administrations both have censored news from the American people. The Obama administration censored the Hunter Biden laptop story because they thought it might impact the election. That's what you guys are saying. Russia does stuff like, oh, they try to impact the election. So does our government. And our government gives money, takes our money, our hard-earned money, and gives it for regime change operations in other countries through USAID, which goes to places like, was it OCCRP? What was it called that we watched the documentary? Like and they brag about it. Like, yes, this is all authoritarian, Boris Pistorius. Yes, you understood him correctly. He's calling your ass out. So he says, if I understood him correctly, he's comparing conditions in parts of Europe with those in authoritarian regimes. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, that is unacceptable. And it is not the Europe and not the democracy in which I live and am currently campaigning. Bullshit. It is reality. It is reality. And you're campaigning. I hope you lose. I hope you lose. Vance also told European leaders that, quote, if you're running in fear of your own voters, there's nothing America can do for you. He said no democracy could survive telling millions of voters that their concerns are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. It's true. Pirate Tomsky, who was our mod over in the UK, Pirate Tomsky says, Keri, welcome to the EU for the past 40 years, right? You're one of the citizens there. You can tell us what it's like, Pirate. Bumbledore says, Boris Pistorius translates to John Bolton. Adam Worrell says, Boris Pistorius. So stupid. You know, the way to my heart is like really bad wordplay and puns. That's just so silly. I love it. It's true. Pirate Tomsky. Yes, he confirms. Yes, they've been authoritarian assholes this whole time. They have. Welcome to reality, Boris Pistorius. AH says, yeah, it's not the democracy that Boris lives in because he's an elite. Oh, man. Okay. Emo Trash. OMG, I just realized that's a McMaga visor. Yes, it is. And I wore it because today I recorded the McMaga song. And the McMaga song, and I sang it to the McDonald's menu song from the 80s, the 1980s. So go and check it out. If you like it, share it. I think it's like only the second short that I have on my YouTube channel. I need to do more. I'm trying to learn how to do more. That's what the kids are doing. But I had fun doing it. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, I'm taking off. It's Valentine's Day. I got to go meet up with my husband on the road. And I had a good time hanging out with you guys today. I love this speech. I don't care what the media says. I don't care what Boris Pistorius says or Olaf Scholz or whoever. Like, we don't really care, Margaret. That's the attitude of 2025. We don't really care, Margaret. We're speaking the truth regardless, okay? Trump and Vance have a mandate here in the States. I pray the same for you guys, for our European friends. I pray the same for you in Canada. Like, I pray for the West. I hope that you stand up and say enough is enough. And yeah, like, well wishes, best wishes on this Valentine's Day. Okay. Happy Valentine's Day, says John. Okay, I think oh, wait, no. There's one more from Randy for $5. I love you. Thank you. But please stop woke right. Stop woke right. They're not right. That's a false continuum. It's a horseshoe. They're left to their core. Well, I hate to ruin this for you, Randy, but I'm working on a piece about how I have finally accepted the phrase woke right because it works. Unfortunately, I was hoping tactically there would be another phrase that was more effective, but until there is, I'm okay with this one now. And I'm trying to explain why in the piece, but it works and they hate it. And you know why it works? Because they are woke. They are leftists. And like you say, they are left to their core. They are. I understand what you're saying. I think that they are closer like to the left than anything, but they say they are on the right. Do you understand? Like they say, and they've been testing new phrases for themselves and they keep testing new ones. They haven't found one that's sticking yet. They were calling themselves very recently the dissident right. Okay. Now then they were calling themselves the new Christian right. And all of these things are false. They're not Christian. They pretend to be Christian. They're not on the right. I agree with you. Ultimately, they believe in collectivism instead of individualism. They oppose free speech. I mean, they're fascists. They don't agree with they believe that the best way to look at the world is as a competition for power among identity groups. That's what the woke believe. That's what the woke believe. I mean, they are leftists at their core. They even now, a lot of them are coming out and saying that they admire stuff that Marx said and that Marx got a lot of things right. Like they say this. They say crazy stuff like this. So I do agree with you. But in terms of it sounds like we just disagree on the phrase. In terms of the phrase, until a better one emerges, that's the one that's the one everybody's using right now. It's the most well-known one for what we're talking about. And I'm not going to use the phrases they use. They want me to call them the new Christian right. No way. Or the dissident right. No way. No way. We're the dissident right. Not them. They're woke. I mean, they are woke. They're woke. They just put different identity groups at the top. The woke left is like, hey, the world is a competition for power among identity groups. And at the top, they're like, we need, they basically say, white people are the oppressors and men are the oppressors and they need to be put down the rung down here. And we need to treat at the very top, we need to treat these people the best and they need to have everything. And these groups, until we reach equity and power or whatever, at their top of their hierarchy, they put like, people of color, they put gay people, trans, they put women, they put the opposite of every group that of what they call the oppressor groups. Okay, so these guys that are, people are calling them the woke right, but they want you to call them the dissident right or the new Christian right or whatever. These guys, they believe almost all the same stuff. They also, like the woke, believe that the U.S. is a white supremacist patriarchy, that it was founded to be a white supremacist patriarchy. That's what the woke believe. And that's what these guys believe. It's just they say that's a good thing, whereas these guys say that's a bad thing. They're both wrong. They're both wrong. But so they believe in a lot of the same things and that, the world is a competition for power among identity groups. But they say in the hierarchy, they say that women and people of color are the oppressors and that, so at the top of theirs, the people we have to treat the best, at the top of theirs, they would say white people and men and, like they just flipped the identity groups. That's all. It's pretty much the same. And they come up with crazy rules. The woke left, they will say like, if you're a man, sit down and shut up and listen. If you're a white person, sit down, shut up and listen. You don't get to have an opinion, that kind of stuff. Well, the so-called woke right, they do the same thing, but they say, if you're if you're a woman, sit down, shut up and listen. You don't get to have an opinion. If you're not white, sit down and shut up and listen. You don't get to have an opinion. Like they do the same. They just change the groups. They change the groups. Okay, Michael Collier for $4.99. Thank you, sir. He says, I enjoyed listening while doing some electrical work on the house. Have a great night. You have a good night too. I'm so glad you were doing some handiwork. We need to do some on our house. If you want to come do some electrical here, Michael, you let me know, okay? And then Randy again for $2. Thank you, Randy. Is this from earlier or this is from, oh, this is from now. Randy says, it's not about the word woke, it's about the word right. Oh, I know. I understood you. I agree. I totally agree. But they say they're on the right. Do you understand that part? And the way that everyone looks at them is as if they're on the right. But, you know, that's the way it is presented. The same way that in history, they try and present fascism as a right-wing excess, even though it could be argued it's actually, like communism, a left-wing excess. But they present it as a right-wing one. Adam Worrell, gynocracy is over. LOL. It is. It's great. And a lot of the so-called woke right guys will say this too. They say some things that are true, just like any good con artist, and just like the woke do. They say some things that are true, and then they go to this crazy place after. Skillet actual. Woke is woke. Thank you, sir, for the $10. Woke is woke. Left and right just refer to the direction from which they attack. Yes, absolutely agreed. And in that perspective, no, I am being honest, Randy, because in that, from what Skillet is saying, they attack from the right. These people who we are calling woke right, these people who call themselves new Christian right or dissident right, I don't care if philosophically, I actually agree with you. Philosophically, they have a lot more in common with the left. They should probably be classified as the left, but they are not classified that way. They're not. They are in right organizations on the right. They speak at conferences that happen on the right. They try and organize voters on the right. A lot of times against the interests of the right. That's true. I think they're bad actors and liars about everything, but they are on the right. When you say Candace Owens, for example, nobody's going to go, "Oh, that's a leftist podcaster." I would argue that she is, but everybody's going to say that's a right-wing podcaster. That's how she has aligned herself and crafted this image. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, they are wolves in sheep clothing. I absolutely agree. But right now, do you know who they are scamming? They are scamming the right. They're scamming the right. That's the ecosystem they're operating in. And we have to call them out. Like, we have to, whether we agree or not on which words or tactics, or like, it's more important to me that you get it. And I know you do. They are scamming the right. And some of them I used to follow. I used to share their stuff. I thought they were on the right too. There's a bunch of these like bad actors now. Like, get those of you who've watched me for a while. I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but since people in the super chats were talking about it and stuff, like, and I'm working on a piece about it, but there's a whole list of people that I started following in the past few years because they had some pretty righteous takes on some things. I thought, like, I agreed with them on a lot, and I thought they were on the right, or they were based. And in the past couple of years, it's mask off moment. Candace Owens is one. Complete nutcase. Pulling people on the right in a very bad direction. Elijah Schaefer's another. I was on his show. Wolf. I don't think he believes anything he says at all. Just a complete charlatan. He's posting all this stuff now about, now that we won, people on the right, we can all agree that Black people are not Americans and they never will be. Like, he's saying all this crazy racist woke stuff that we don't want that. Like, get the F out. Also, there are some of them who are ministers, who are pastors at Christian churches. Joel Webbin in Georgetown, he's one of them. He's posting stuff now and doing sermons now about, and trust me, I didn't want this to be true about him. I took a long time I was slow to speak, slow to form an opinion, because I only had a good impression of him for a while, but I didn't follow him too closely. All of a sudden I noticed he's saying crazy stuff. All this Jew-hating stuff, and beyond that, like prideful stuff that a pastor should not be saying. Just full of ego and pride about how, getting into public wars with other pastors, trying to tear down good men of God, and saying, as if it was some kind of one-up or something, saying, and that's why young men will continue to flock to me and nobody will remember your name. That's what he said about another pastor. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. When I saw that was when, after trying to take a while to form my opinion, that's when I was like, oh, I see you. I see your face. I see the devil's pride right there. It is not about your name or that other pastor's name or anybody's name, my name, it's about the name of God, of Jesus Christ. You're supposed to be a shepherd. What is wrong with you? I wanted to puke. And since then, I've been watching the stuff he's putting out. Even after I saw that and I saw what he was, I didn't say anything for a while. But now it's like, he is actually, and people like him and these others who claim to be Christians, who are pastors of churches, like Eric Kahn. I'm starting to familiarize myself with a bunch of their names. They are taking stuff from so-called Christian podcasts like Stone Choir, which those guys outright say, hey, we're white supremacists and white nationalists. Like, those guys admit it. They love Hitler. They say Hitler was a servant of God. That's what they say, these guys. This is happening. And they take Eric Kahn and Brian Suave, or whatever his name is, and Joel Webbin. They take the Stone Choir stuff, the Nazi stuff, and they steal it and rip it off and then try and soften it just a little bit, but pass it off as their own. Actually, the Nazi guys hate them. The Stone Choir guys are like, quit stealing our stuff. Come up with some ideas and sayings and mannerisms of your own. Even our mannerisms you're stealing, right? But so these guys they're leading young men astray. I can't stand it. There's almost nothing I hate more. You guys know, if you've watched the channel for a while, or if you follow me anywhere on social media, it's like, there's very few things that I have more of a hatred for than I do for woke pastors. These fake Christian pastors who lead truth seekers astray, who lead people astray. These are people come to them looking for God, and these woke pastors lead them in the wrong direction towards all this racist, white people are the oppressors and black people are marginalized and all this racist Marxist crap. Like, woke pastors are the worst. There are Bible verses about leading the sheep astray. Well, these guys, they do the same. These woke right pastors, they do the same. That truth seekers come to you and you lead all these young men who have good reason to be disaffected, who have very good grievances with the woke world we've been living in. And what do? You just give them another version of woke. You just give them another version. You sound just like the feminists. The feminists are like, everything is men's fault. And you guys are like, everything is women's fault. I mean, you're just the same. You're like Andrew Tate, but you pretend to be a Christian pastor. Disgusting. Fake right. That's a good, Alan. That's good. Fake right. Maybe I'll start calling them that. It is childish thinking, John. And it's sad because, look, somebody in the chat earlier said, and I think it was Bros and Bros, said, I'm still of the belief that the woke right phenomenon doesn't exist in reality and is a leftist mirage. Meaning, I think what you mean is that a lot of these people are bots and it's fake and it's an op. Okay, well, I do think it's an op. A lot of it is an op. I think a lot of the big influencers are probably being paid or something. I don't know. Maybe. But it's both. Just like woke was. It's an op, but it's working. They are pulling real people in. I know real people who are being pulled into some of this crap. I know some of you in the comments have told me that you have friends who are being pulled into this crap. It seems to me that the same way that with woke ideology, it was women who were more susceptible to it. It seems that it's men who are more susceptible to this crap, slightly more, right? But young men who are being pulled into it. And who are suddenly, just like the woke, they're all spouting the same stuff. Here's the stuff. You go to their bios and it's all the same stuff. They're talking about how they're theo-fascists, they're new fascists. A lot of them outright say they're fascists. They put stuff in their bios. They call themselves Christian, of course, whatever. They say that. They don't behave that way. They don't believe that way. But they say, a lot of them say Christ is king. They're fascists. They follow the New American Fascist Party. They say heritage American. They mean white. They say, I'm a heritage American. Heritage American is like, I don't know. It's just funny to me. It's sort of like pronouns in bio. They all have it in there. Heritage American. What? What does that mean? I'm sure that you get an inflated sense of pride the same way that the woke people get an inflated sense of pride when they put all of their different oppressions in there, their so-called oppressions. But they all have like heritage American. They also talk about the post-war liberal post-war consensus. They all talk about how melting pot was a Jewish myth. Like they just have the same. If you talk to one of them, just like with the woke, if you talk to one of them, it's like you've talked to any other one of them. They're all the same. They're all like little robots who are just like heritage American, liberal post-war consensus, Longhouse, like Longhouse. Yeah. So these guys are a looming problem. That's all. I don't know how big of a problem they'll be. I'm hoping it's not going to be that big of a problem. I'm hoping that common sense people are like, what the heck? This is not what we're about. The left don't repeat the mistakes of liberals. Okay. Liberals did not kick these crazy freaks out. Liberals did not restrain woke authoritarianism from taking over. They did not keep it out until it ate the whole of the left, until you had major political candidates for the Democratic Party saying woke cult stuff. It took over. Woke cannibalized the left. So I hope that doesn't happen. I think the odds are pretty good that it won't happen on the right, because I think the right is more... I don't think this is a bias. I think this is true. I think that the right is a little more open-eyed. I think they're a little more awake to this kind of stuff than the left is. At least I hope that's true. And I know so many common sense people on the right who, it's not so much that they don't see this as a problem. I think it's that we're in the stage where they don't see it happening yet, because they're not in the right places to see it percolating. It percolated on the left and online a lot, and in colleges. Like there were certain places where it was percolating before it took over everything, woke stuff. So right now, where I mostly see it percolating in the mainstream would be X. I see some of it on Facebook too. Once in a while, I'll get it in the comments, but mostly I see it on X. And in other, forums, obviously all of Gab is like this. Torba is one of these guys. But that's where it's at right now. And I don't want to make the mistake of pretending it's just going to stay there. I hope it does, but don't pretend that. You know, I had people tell me that about woke on the left. I had liberals who, when I started speaking up against it in 2016, I had liberal friends who were like, okay, this is a problem. You're right. It's not liberal. It's different. It's identity Marxism. It's authoritarian, all these things. But they were saying, don't worry. It's contained to the internet. You know, they were like, it's contained to the internet and social media and university campuses. It's not going to escape these places. And it did. It did. So it is growing a little bit. It is both an op, and there are real people who are falling for this crap. And if you have friends on the right, young men who are falling for this crap, like, talk to them about it. It's not, talk to them in the language Randa uses. It's not actual conservatism. It's not actual Christianity. And it's not masculine. That's the other funny thing. These guys, they worship Andrew Tate and all these people too, but a lot of these guys, especially the ones who claim to be Christian, they're always talking about masculinity and stuff while they wear skinny jeans and they pay people to style them for podcast episodes, and they do like really toxically feminine stuff. Like they create private Telegram groups where they go in and they beg people to create anonymous accounts to like go to war for them on X with their social media enemies. Like, that's so feminine to be perpetually online. You know, when masculinity goes wrong, it's overtly aggressive. When femininity goes wrong, it's passive aggressive. So what I'm saying is that they behave in ways that are toxic feminine, not toxic masculine, but toxic feminine. They're like very much like, you know, this kind of bitchy, catty, mean girl. Like they're like middle school girls. They're all always talking about like, we're about masculinity. And I'm like, you are the least masculine people I've ever seen. Do you do anything offline ever? Do any of you do any kind of masculine job at all? Any of you? I probably do more masculine jobs than you. I work around heavy machinery and equipment. One of my gigs, like, what do you guys? You're always on Twitter and you're battling it out, like, and meanwhile you're preaching masculinity, and you get all these guys like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys to follow you, and they're like, let me follow this bearded, skinny jeaned hipster to masculinity. Give me a friggin' break. Total tard. Tate is a retard. He is. He is. Okay. So he's overcompensating for something. Yeah. I didn't intend to go on this rant today, but look, I'm kind of glad it's on my mind. It's, if you haven't noticed it, that's good. I mean, it hasn't reached you yet, and I hope it doesn't. But I'm afraid, like the canary in the coal mine, you know, that it'll be similar to woke, where it does start to reach you someday. Those of you who even doubt in the comments, like pretty soon you're going to be like, I know a friend who suddenly started talking about the Jews all the time. You know, you got Candace Owens doing videos now about how the Jews did 9/11. It's ridiculous and lying, overtly lying. I did a post trying to enumerate a couple of her lies. She manipulates like the mainstream media does, just outright, and assumes that her audience won't look these things up. It's crazy. Okay, I gotta go. Michael Collier for $4.99 says, so if we keep super chatting, the show can't be over. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super chats, everyone. It's got to be over. I got to go. I got to get on the road. Have a good weekend. If you are a believer, get to church this weekend. If you're not a believer, maybe go and try out some churches. See what you think of it. It's a good time. It's a good way to express gratitude with other people who are grateful. And I don't know, it makes you look forward to the weekend even more than usual. Like I always look forward to Sundays. I'm very excited. Also, my church meets at 2:00. So I get to, sometime, if I want to, I can visit other churches in the morning, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to visit another church this Sunday, which I'm excited about. So, okay, I'm just rambling. I'll see you guys later. Take care. Happy Valentine's Day. And I'll see you on Monday. Thanks for Randy, thank you for going back and forth with me, because you helped me make my arguments or my thoughts stronger, or to discard bad ones. So everyone who, and those who say they don't believe this is happening yet, thank you, because you helped me. Whether you believe it or not, you helped me. Okay, I'm leaving. Goodbye.